Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank IMA Bhinder, Dr. Sanjay Mehra sir and Sanofi for giving me this opportunity, and Dr. Amaya Joshi sir for motivating me to do this webinar. And I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
My slides are visible, right?
No, it is yet.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
visible
Now it
now.
is visible, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so I'll start. So basically, I will be talking about the next generation basal insulin. So slides aren't moving. Just give me a minute. So basically, first I'll start with the introduction to basal insulins and coming on to the evidence and properties of the second generation basal insulins. And then we will touch upon glycemic variability and time in range. So, if we see the history, then the insulin was discovered in 1920s, and in 1946 we were introduced to the first basal insulin, the NPH insulin, and in early 2000s we got glargine 100 and detamir insulins, and this glargine 100 has been revolutionary for the basal insulins, and it was promoted as a peakless insulin. But in 2015 we were introduced to insulin degludec and glargine, which were even more peakless than the previous insulin which was available. And most of the guidelines on diabetes in all countries, even in India, they recommend basal insulin as the first thing when you start insulin for any person. So, because it is very simple and convenient to initiate, and it is very easy and it is safe to titrate. It has a smooth maintenance period. So, patient themselves can titrate their insulins. So, it is effective in real practice, especially today in these COVID times. And it has various properties like less hypoglycemia, less weight gain, and flexibility to use with oral agents. So this results in an improved quality of life and patient satisfaction. So I would just like you to think about certain questions, that what do you think, how many type 2 diabetics are prescribed insulin in our country? And what do you think is their average glycosylated hemoglobin when this insulin is started? And for those of you who are using this basal insulin, what do you think, which dose what is the dose up to which this basal insulin is optimized once it is initiated? So this was a real world study, the landmark trial, and they, for 3 years, they just observed the trends. And it was discovered that only 1/4 of our patients are on insulin. And it takes many years before insulin is initiated. And for a long period of time, the average A1C was 9.2 before insulin could be introduced. So this depicts inertia on our and the patient's part. And we know that basal insulin has a ceiling dose of up to zero 0.5 units per kg. But in our country, even for patients who were initiated on this insulin, still they were not intensified. So on an average, 18 units was the dose which was given to our patients, although in trials up to 40 units have been used. So why is this happening? One of the reasons is hypoglycemia. So when you are aiming for a tight glycemic control, on the other end of the spectrum lies the fear of hypoglycemia, which can decrease the quality of life, decrease productivity, increase costs, and even increase complication. but we have to achieve a tight glycemic control, which can decrease our acute as well as chronic complications and increase the quality of life. So our aim is to maintain a balance between these two. And one of the things is the titration part. The first 2 to 3 months, when you initiate the insulin injection, that is the decider for the patient. That is the period when you're titrating, when you're increasing the doses, the risk of hypoglycemia is maximum. So that is the decider for the patient, as well as for us to see that somebody who has had a hypoglycemia in this period may predict the risk for a long-term hypoglycemia. So coming on to the second generation basal insulins. So these basically today we have two basal insulins of the second generation. One is Glargine 300 and one is the Degludec insulin. So the Glargine 100 insulin was basically, it was made into a more compact molecule. The molecule is the same, but per ml, the unit content of insulin is more in Glargine 300. And this is basically stored in the subcu. This makes a subcutaneous depot, and this insulin is slowly released. And in Degludec, they have made dihexamers, and again this is subcutaneous depot, and this binds to albumin and it is slowly released in the circulation. So these two insulins have duration of more than 24 hours. So various studies have been done for these insulin, and they have been mainly compared to the previous gold standard, which is the Glargine 100 insulin that we use. So the addition set of trials were done to compare Glargine 300, the one we are talking about right now, and the Glargine 100, which has been widely used over time. So the addition trials done in various type of populations, like insulin naive population, patients already on basal bolus, patients uncontrolled on oral drugs. So all these have shown that the A1C reduction is almost equal with both the insulin. But the hypoglycemia risk, the weight reduction, this is more with Glargine 300. So similar studies have been done with Degludec insulin, and in the BEGIN set of trials, the one you can see on the right, they were done to compare Degludec insulin and Glargine 100 insulin. So this has shown that the rate of nocturnal hypoglycemia was less with Degludec insulin as compared to the Glargine 100. And this is something we will touch upon later. But in short, if you see this graph on the left, the blue one is Glargine 100 and green is Glargine 300. So you can see that there are no peaks and troughs in the green one, which is the Glargine 300. So the variability throughout the day was 14 mg per dl for Glargine 300. And on the right, you can see that whether you give this Glargine 300 injection in morning or evening, the profile of glucose remains stable. And once the risk of hypoglycemia is cut, so this will decrease our healthcare costs, patient getting admitted for this. So this was shown in a real world study in the US. So we talked about the two basal insulins, the Glargine 300 and Degludec 100. So there are various studies which have compared these. So earlier pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic studies have taken place. Then we had the BEGIN and the addition trial that we talked about, where they have compared it to Glargine 100. Other than that, there have been real world studies which compared Glargine 300 and Degludec. So this is DELIVER naive study, where insulin naive patients have received either Glargine 300 or Degludec. So this has shown a similar glycemic control, similar HbA1c reduction for both the insulins. Another study two randomized control trials were done with comparing these two insulins. So the first one was BRIGHT study, where they have initiated one group on glargine 300 and one group on degludec insulin, and they have followed up these patients. So again, if you see the HbA1c reduction, this was similar in both the groups. If we look at the hypoglycemia, so they have divided into anytime hypoglycemia or the nocturnal hypoglycemia. So the full study period, the hypoglycemia rates were similar in both the studies. But if we look at the titration period, what we talked about, that the first 3 months when we are initiating the insulin, at that time, anytime hypoglycemia as well as nocturnal hypoglycemia was lesser with glargine 300. There was another study called Conclude study, and again this compared degludec 200. So this is not the one which we have in India, which is degludec 100. This is a degludec 200, but they had some problems with the trial. There were some faulty glucometers, but still when this study had a primary objective, that they were considering, the hypothesis was that degludec was superior to glargine 300, and the number of severe symptomatic hypoglycemia will be more with glargine. So this study unfortunately could not achieve its primary objective. And usually in statistics, if you can't achieve your primary objective, you can't do any other analysis in such studies. But they have done some exploratory analysis which favor degludec for hypoglycemia. So apart from this, about the safety profile of glargine 300, so the BRIGHT study that we talked about, comparing degludec and glargine, so this had a subset of BRIGHT renal patients. So what they found was that patients with CKD with GFR less than 60 had more reduction in HbA1c with glargine 300. So but this was not at the expense of hypoglycemia. So both the groups had similar hypoglycemic episodes, because in renal patients we are worried more about that. But the HbA1c reduction was 1% more with glargine 300. Another subset was BRIGHT elderly subset. So in the BRIGHT study, they took data of population more than 70 years. Again, the HbA1c reduction was greater with similar hypoglycemia risk with glargine 300 insulin. Even in Ramzan, they have done a real world study for 11 countries. So these patients were started on glargine 300 insulin before Ramzan, and they were titrated, and many people had their HbA1c controlled pre-Ramzan, and then because they're fasting, but the fasting sugar needs a control with a basal insulin. So basal insulin was continued, and the hypoglycemia was low even with the use of insulin in the fasting period. So pre-Ramzan it was 2.2, Ramzan 2.6. So not that much rise for hypoglycemia, and there were no symptomatic or severe hypoglycemic episodes. Another study about safety was with degludec 100. So as we talked about the structure of degludec, so the mechanism is that degludec will bind with albumin and it will be gradually released in the circulation. But what if the albumin level is low? So this degludec will not be able to bind, and there will be more amount of free insulin available. So this can lead to more hypoglycemia. So this was again proved in a study where low albumin level will lead to more hypoglycemia with degludec insulin. So just changing gears now, we will talk about something called as glycemic variability and time in range. So what is this glycemic variability? It means that throughout the day there are peaks and troughs. So within day and day-to-day variation. So this glycemic variability leads to high oxidative stress And because of peaks and troughs, it can lead to severe hypoglycemia. So usually we are used to seeing the HbA1c and telling the patient that this is under control or not. But if you see the graph on the left, so even if there are peaks and troughs, the average will come on to 7%. So patient can have a controlled A1C, but they can have sugars ranging from 100 to 300. So basically, they will have peaks when they have food. So there will be peaks, and the interprandial period, they can have troughs and hypoglycemia. And this can lead to cardiovascular damage, cognitive impairment, and an increased risk of mortality. There is a classic DCCT trial done in type 2 diabetic patients, which actually gave us the number of 7% for HbA1c. And data from these studies, when they saw the variability in these studies, they found that if the time in range is less by 10%, it can increase retinopathy by 64%, nephropathy by 40%, and neuropathy by 25%. And even for macrovascular risk, carotid intima media thickness was found to be increased with a decreased time in range. So just to explain what is time in range that we are talking about, is that our target range of glucose is 70 to 180 mg per dl. So most of our time, so 70% of the day, which is at least 17 hours, our aim is to be in this target for good, uh, for reduction of all the micro and macrovascular complications that we talked about. So this target glucose more than 17 hours is our aim. And so where did this concept come from is that we started use of continuous glucose monitoring. So in this, basically some sensor is put, and 24-hour data of glucose is recorded. So when this CGM was introduced, then we got this concept of glycemic variability and time in range, and we could check actually that what is patient's glucose every 5 minutes. And now it has, because these studies have shown an effect of time in range with the complications, so the newer guidelines have actually included this time in range concept for diabetes. And the advanced treatment technologies for diabetes treatment has also given us different time in range profile for different conditions. For an average person, more than 70%, but for an older person, because of the risk of hypoglycemia, more than 50% is acceptable. But if you see the pregnancy patient, then they need a higher target time in range, and they have different targets. But on an average, more than 70% of the time has been recommended for this. So again, they have done various studies to show how insulin is contributing to this variability and this time in range. So the studies have been done with the use of continuous glucose monitoring. And this is a study done in type 1 diabetic patient, where they have compared glargine 300 and glargine 100. So coming back to the graph that we saw earlier, so the blue one is glargine 100, which is showing a peak and a trough, and the green one is the glargine 300, which has just 14 mg per dl glycemic variability, meaning the highest value and the lowest value had a difference of 14 milligram per dl. So there was less fluctuation and a less hypoglycemia. So the another study was done in both type 1 and type 2 diabetic patients. So what they did was they applied CGM in the nocturnal period, and they have found that the nocturnal variability was less with glargine 300, which is very important for our patients. And if in glargine 100, usually we are very strict with the timing, that every day the patient has to take it at the same time, because the action is 24 hours. But with glargine 300, where the action is more than 24 hours, there could be a 6-hour flexibility in dosing. So 3 hours before or 3 hours later, if a patient misses the injection, they can have flexible timings with the same effect. Coming on to the comparison of these second generation insulin, the Glargine 300 versus Degludec 100, this is a clamp study which revealed that the within day variability was lesser with Glargine 300. And real world studies have been done. There was a study in Japan which used CGM, flash glucose monitoring, and it showed that Glargine 300 had lesser risk of nocturnal hypoglycemia. Another study was done in type 2 diabetic patients, which was a randomized control trial. And again, they had similar results. So time below range means hypoglycemia was lesser. So various studies have been done which have revealed the same result. So I will not go into the detail. So to summarize about Glargine 300, so the initiation dose is 0.2 units per kg. And this can be used either in the morning or in the evening, according to patient's convenience. If the patient is already on oral drugs, you can add on this basal insulin. And the titration for this is after 3 to 4 days, you can increase the dose, or you can do a weekly titration. Usually the ceiling dose that we say is 0.5 units per kg per day. We feel that after that dose, it will not be more effective at higher doses than this. And as we saw in the bright renal, bright elderly population, it is safe to prescribe these to such population with a lower risk of hypoglycemia. And we have to move from a glycemic triad, meaning we were always looking at fasting sugar, PP sugar, and HbA1c. From that, we have to move on to decreasing anytime hypoglycemia, nocturnal hypoglycemia, and decreasing glycemic variability. Though CGM may not be available for all of us, but we can always ensure that there is minimum glycemic variability and more time in range, even if we can't do CGM. So these second generation insulin, to summarize, they have a stable and prolonged action. They have less glycemic variability. They have an effective and sustained control. They are safer. They have less overall and nocturnal hypoglycemia. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you.